Okay, folks, decided to make a little how-to video on how to remove the dashboard structure and the HVAC plenum out of a 2004 Buick LeSabre. This car, this particular body style, I think was the same from about 2000 through 2005. So this video should apply to all of those model years. The reason I decided to make this video was because I had a need to do this with this car, and I could not find a single video anywhere online that had instructions on how to do it. So here we go. Before you get started, probably the first thing you need to do if you're going to pull your HVAC plenum is to disconnect the heater hoses and the AC line that's right there. You can't really see it. Well, there it is. There's an 8mm stud right there with a 13mm nut on it that holds the AC line in place. Remove that, the Freon will escape, and the heater hoses. They do have spring clips on them from the factory, and they are a pain in the ass to remove. I put screw clamps back on when I went back with it. So that is the first thing you need to do. I would recommend plugging the heater core pipes with something, because when you pull it through the firewall, you will spill some coolant and you don't want to get it on your carpet. So that's the first thing. That's the starting point. I've already put this one back together, but it's not all the way back together. So in order to do this, I would recommend the first step when you get inside the car is to just go ahead and remove the seats. Just get them out of your way. You'll be glad that you did it. Trying to do this job with the seats in place will just kill you, especially if you're a big guy like me. I just couldn't do it with the seats in. So the first thing you have to do is take the top off of the dashboard, the dash pad. And it's actually fairly easy to remove. On each side right here, there is a single screw. There's one here, and then there's one over on the other side. That's right here, that have to be removed first before you start trying to remove any part of the top of the dash. To get to these screws on the side, you have to remove these panels that are on the very sides of your dashboard that go right here, and they just clip in, so it just snaps out. You also have to remove the A-pillar trim on both sides in order to do this. So once you've removed these side panels, and then you have to take this, there's another bezel that goes on here that comes off, and it just clamps in place with the exception of one screw right here. No, I'm sorry, this screw holds the gauge bezel on. You do not have to take the gauge bezel off, in fact, to do this. But you do have to take this wood grain piece off right here that covers the HVAC control in order to get to this screw right here. So once that's off, then you can start removing the dash pad. Let me go in the garage here where the pad is sitting. So here's the dash pad, and before you can remove the dash pad, you have to remove this panel. This is all the way forward on the windshield, and this panel just snaps in with these clips. It is fairly difficult to remove. You have to be careful because you can break these clips very easily. I would recommend using a long screwdriver. In this case, I started in the middle and I was able to get a couple of them unsnapped, and then I put a small block of wood under it to hold it up so that I could see under there. And then once you can see, then you can reach the area where the clips are with a screwdriver and kind of pry up carefully, and then eventually it comes up. And so once you get this piece removed, Then there is a single screw here on this left side, a single screw in the middle right here, and two more screws on the right hand side. The two on this side actually have 10mm bolt heads on them. These other ones are just 7mm sheet metal screws. It has larger bolts on this side to make the structure a little more solid because of the airbag. So that's a total of 4 or 5 screws. There's a total of 5 screws you have to remove. Once that's out, and you have the 2 screws on either side removed, then this whole assembly just unsnaps. It's got clips on it. There's one, there's one. Anyway, it just unsnaps and comes up. It does have this thing right here in the middle that's kind of a hook. I guess it's there to keep the dash pad from blowing completely up in your face when the airbag deploys. But it's a little bit pesky because it's hooked underneath on a piece of the structure and you have to maneuver it. But once you get it unsnapped, you can get this entire dash pad removed, and it's not that big of a deal. So now you got the top off the dash, you can start taking the steering column down. Sounds intimidating, but it's not that big of a deal. So under the dash steering column, you got this knee pad here, and it just clips in. It's got clips on it. There's 4, 2 on each side. So it pulls off, and then you have this crash panel here. It's got 4 bolts that hold it on. Let's see. Right there is one. It's a 10mm head. There's another one on the other side, the same position. And then you have some under here. Right there's one. And there's another one over there on that corner. There's a total of 4. Then this whole structure comes off out of the way. Then you have another bracket here. It's got these different colored 10mm bolts right here and here. And this bracket supports these 2 big wiring harnesses here. So once that bracket is loose, then you can unconnect these wiring harnesses. And this is the main harness that disconnects from the dash. Very simple, easy thing to do. You get them disconnected once the bracket's loose, and it hangs down out of the way. You forget about that. The only other connector you have to disconnect on this side is this yellow connector right here. This contains some of the airbag wiring, and it also contains some wiring for the brake light and cruise control switches right there. So that has to be disconnected. Once that's out of the way, there are 4 bolts that hold the steering column in place. And you'll be able to see them once this is all out of the way. They're 13mm nuts, actually. And the steering column will drop down. You may find, let me get it in my viewfinder here, that you need to unconnect the shifter cable, which is right here, to allow you to get a socket on one of the steering column bolts. So there's a safety pin that goes in here. You pull that metal pin down, and then the shifter cable disconnects. And you can take the shifter cable down, and then the whole column will come down. And then here is a 13mm bolt on one side of the steering column, and another one on the other side. That's part of the dash structure. You have to take those 2 bolts out. Here is another bolt on the dash structure on the driver's side, another one above it, and a third one right there on the top. These are all 13mm. There's 3 on the left side, and there's 3 on the right side in the same position. Then you have 2 more 13mm nuts right here. There's a 3rd one in the center, and a 4th one right over there on the passenger side. There is a position for a fifth one that does not have a nut on it. Do not put a nut on that one when you put it back, or you will crack that bracket. So, once you have all of those nuts loose and the steering column is down in the floor, the entire dashboard structure is loose and it will come out. There are a couple more wiring harnesses that you have to disconnect on the passenger side. So you come over here, there's another one of these yellow airbag connectors here that has to be disconnected. And then there are 3 plugs right here that go into the, I believe this is the BCM right here, I'm not sure, but these have to be unplugged. I don't think they have to be unplugged to remove the dash. They have to be unplugged to remove the HVAC Plenum. So once these are all disconnected, then the entire dashboard structure will come out of the car. I found it easiest to remove it from the passenger side. Once the dash structure is out, the HVAC Plenum is readily accessible. It has about 5 or 6 of these 13mm nuts that hold it in place to the firewall. And they're readily accessible. There's one over here underneath of the blower motor, and there's 2 or 3 along the top edge of it, and then there are a couple of them right there next to the accelerator pedal. Once those are removed and you have your heater core and your AC lines disconnected, the entire plenum will come out of the car, and then you can service it on a bench top. In my case, I had to do all of this work because the previous owner of this car kept it parked under some oak trees and some pine trees, and the cowl got full of tree trash, and it eventually made its way into the plenum, and it plugged up the drain, and then it got mildewed, and it was just a mess. And so I had to take it all apart to fix it. Anyway, hopefully this video will help some folks out that have a Buick LeSabre that needs some dashboard maintenance.